For nearly a decade now, Archer has been the smartest comedy on TV. Now, you might not think so between its choking sex robots, holographic anime brides, rampant alcoholism, and often ineffective spycraft, but hidden within its hilariously over-the-top antics are some of the smartest, weirdest, and most obscure references you'll find in any piece of TV. So in honor of Archer Danger Island season finale, and given that it's the show's 9th season, on today's episode of The Dan Cave, I'm gonna run down 9 of the most obscure references in Archer history. Bartleby the Scrivener. One of Archer's best literary deep cuts is from way back in the season 1 episode Scorpio. When the corpulent arms dealer Spiridon Scorpio commands Archer to bring chocolate to a threesome with himself and Lana, the super spy replies plainly, "I'd prefer not to." Now you might be having a flashback to high school English because that's the infamous catchphrase of Herman Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener, who would say the same thing when asked to do any number of unsavory tasks. But then again, no one asked Bartleby about a chocolate threesome, but who can say if that would have changed his tune? Prude.
Not a big Melville crowd here, huh?
The destruction of Sennacherib. Now, not only is Pam Poofy handy with a dolphin puppet in resolving interpersonal conflicts, but she can beat the ever-loving crap out of you as well. And even more intimidating than her hand-to-hand combat skills is the fact that she has the 3rd stanza of Lord Byron's poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib, tattooed on her back. Now, most people opt for like 2 dragons smooching, or a glorious phoenix like Ben Affleck, or the Monster Energy drink logo, but not Pam. As we learn in season 2's El Sequestro, she prefers a poem about an Assyrian king trying to capture Jerusalem. What? Were you expecting Don Juan? How pedestrian. Sinners in the hands of an angry god. When Archer was so unspeakably hungover in season 3's Crossing Over that he needed an entire pitcher of Bloody Marys to make his head stop pounding, he was perhaps at his most relatable. But unlike the majority of us when we're hungover, Archer actually had the wherewithal to quote a sermon from 1741 by British theologian Jonathan Edwards. Now, personally speaking, I prefer Archer's prayer mainly because a gigantic pitcher of Bloody Marys is my platonic ideal of a great awakening.
Amen.
The Sirens of Titan. Remember in season 4 when Archer had to travel to Morocco to help extract a secret agent only to find out that he was a little boy dog? Well, that dog, Kazakh the English Mastiff, is a certified purebred in terms of literary credentials. He's named in honor of Kazakh, the spacefaring dog from Kurt Vonnegut's novel, The Sirens of Titan. Now, someone must have double dog-dared Adam Reed and Mike Arnold to make double the obscure dog references because the episode itself, Un Chien Tangerine, which means a tangerine dog, is a reference to surrealist filmmaker Luis Buñuel's 1929 short film Un Chien Andalou, which means an Andalusian dog. Thankfully though, this episode contains far fewer instances of razor blades slicing into human eyeballs because, yikes, it is hard to watch. Did a PowerPoint on that back in high school Spanish. Look at me now, Senor Benaghi. Johnny Bench called. One of Archer's most delightful deep cuts happened in the show's very first episode. Archer tells his mother Mallory that Johnny Bench called, then trails off. Now, Johnny Bench is a Hall of Fame catcher who played for the Cincinnati Reds and had famously large fingers that let him hold up to 7 baseballs at once. The implication is that Archer's next line would be, he wants his mitt back, which is to suggest that his mother's lady parts are akin to a gigantic, well-worn catcher's mitt. It also paved the way for Archer to refer to Lana's Johnny Benchian fingers a few episodes later. It's also just straight up gross. Ugh. Alphonse Bertillon. In the season 7 episode, The Handoff, Cheryl wants to burn a cashier's check, but Cyril wards her off, noting that it could have fingerprints on it. In response, Cheryl shoots back, well, who am I, Alphonse Bertillon? Well, you'd be forgiven if that sailed right over your head, because Bertillon was a 19th century French police officer who created a technique known as anthropometry, which was the first scientific system of identifying criminals based on their physical measurements. It was later replaced by fingerprinting, and also, Bertillon invented the mugshot, which is something I'm pretty sure 95% of the Archer gang has in spades. P.G. Woodhouse. Now, one of Archer's sneakiest references is actually hiding in plain sight. Archer's trusty, mistreated heroin and jazz-addled butler, Woodhouse. His name is actually a sly reference to a series of stories by English author P.G. Woodhouse about a highly capable valet named Jeeves who serves an incredibly wealthy man named Wooster. In these stories, Jeeves has to rescue Wooster from putting his foot in his mouth at every conceivable turn, much like Woodhouse must help Archer out from all manner of unsavory situations. Except, unlike Jeeves, Woodhouse stands an exponentially higher risk of getting straight up murdered or being threatened with coarse-grained sand.
I don't know if they grade it, but course.
Emile Zola. How would you like to be remembered when you die? Something tells me that French novelist and journalist Emile Zola didn't anticipate being turned into a hamburger pun, yet that's exactly what happened to the literary giant in Season 4's Fugue and Riffs. Believing himself to be Bob Belcher, Archer devises a deliciously cheesy Emile Gorgonzola burger served with J'accuse cumbers, the topping itself being a reference to Zola's famous 1898 letter, J'accuse, which he published to accuse the French government of anti-Semitism in the wake of unlawfully imprisoning Alfred Dreyfus. The only thing we can accuse Archer of, though, is thinking that Gorgonzola and cucumber is a winning burger combination. What are you doing? Peter Abelard and Helwa d'Argenteuil. When Archer awakens from a drunken one-night stand with a French flight attendant in the show's very first episode, he finds a pug in his apartment which violates Archer's strict no dogs rule. Now, Abelard's name is actually a joke nested within a series of jokes, all leading back to anal sex. When the woman tells Archer that she's hungry, he tells her to go to the diner because she's obviously into Greek. Now, this is a double entendre because Greek was a slang term for anal sex, referencing its popularity in ancient Greece. Her dog, Abelard, is named for a medieval French philosopher who dedicated his life to studying Greek thinkers. Now, according to a user on Reddit, JR this joke goes even deeper. Abelard famously had a romance with a younger working class woman named Helwa d'Argenteuil. Much like Helwa, this flight attendant is a younger working class woman who loves her Abelard. But wait, there's more. Not only was Helwa a scholar in her own right, but wait for it, she was fluent in Greek, and thus, much like life, it all comes back to butt sex. And those are some of the most obscure references in Archer's storied history. But tell me, which one's your favorite? What would you add to this list? Let me know in the comments below and give me a highly obscure thumbs up while you're there. Now be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell or else you might miss next week's show all about 7 masterless samurai who come to a seaside town where 4 young friends are being stalked by a hook-wielding maniac and 7 samurai know what you did last summer. Until next time, keep on digging. Let's open up the old mailbag, shall we? At AWM3 asks, what would a Skywalker Solo family reunion have been like if Kylo never killed Han? Well, great question. If Kylo had never killed Han, a Solo Skywalker family reunion would have been way less narratively interesting. I hope still no shirt, because that's a pretty cool look. Star Wars has always been a story of troubled relationships between parents and children, and honestly, it doesn't get much more trouble than straight up murdering your dad on a bridge. My one complaint about how they did that, though, they shouldn't have revealed that Kylo was Ben Solo until Han confronted him on the bridge in Starkiller Base. I mean, look, if you're gonna pay homage to the original trilogy, why not pay homage to the most iconic reveal of all time? Anyway, I don't know, what do you guys think that reunion would have been like? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.